been recorded. Now it's
Recording in
recording. Yeah,
progress.
thank you. I saw these messages come in on time. Hi. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Mick, and everyone else. It's really important that we document. Um, so as I was saying, um, we go with themes, and we have several groups happening, and the themes are the same, but there's something that matures every time we talk about the same thing. We're able to condense material, so we could always share with you both calls, for those who have time. There's really so much here. So one thing that was flowing through me when I was overhearing Fanny speak about the systems that are arising here in Maya, which has been long happening globally as well. Um, a new understanding within structuralist linguistics and psychology is this a really interesting notion that when you take in information, it could be like an idea, a thought, a concept, you don't just bank it into your mind or your brain. The new understanding is that you actually have to change your brain just to take in that concept. Every thought, every idea, you literally have to undergo a transformation. So when something new arises, you have to be ready um, to undergo the not just a change, but a a construction. You want to be patient with this. It took a long time to make you, so to remake you will take some time. Maybe not as long, because change is happening exponentially right now, dimensionally. But nonetheless, you want to be kind. But you are headed there towards the nature of you as a cosmos, as a nervous system, as an ecosystem, all of which hold complexities. You're incredibly complex. You are probably just as complex as the universe. Um, and there's something in that system that is getting to know itself, whether it is conscious or not. Something is alive and is is wise. So it's the same with the tools. There are many tools within the inner dance process, not just regarding the music. A lot of the tools have to do with your hands, with your energy, with your words, with your heart. And then when you check in with people's bodies, which you will, the tools are also inbuilt. The tools are the hearts of others, the lungs, the electricity pathways, but then there are also the neurotransmitters, the hormones, the chemicals that send messages out or in. So this complexity is going to be at work when you start holding space. Some of you already are doing that. We share with you different theoretics, different frameworks to assist you in bringing more observation to what's happening. There are a lot of you who are passionate about this, who really want to learn it. So we would focus all of these journeys into how to bring the growing understanding into effective practice. We take it slow, but because there's so much, we also need to pace with a speed that meets your level of interest. And we will branch out into many different um, fractals depending on where you want to go, so that some of the things that you might be more interested in, you can enter those rooms, and some of the things that you may not be so interested in, you don't need to go there. Um, We have to keep learning how to do that as a community. Okay, so I have a Prezi. My share screen isn't working properly where Prezi is concerned, so I need to go straight into the Prezi video app. And sometimes that's kind of clumsy because I need to move things around that you may not see on your screen. So for example, there's this thing on the side that's covering up the... Okay, so that's okay. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so maybe I can hide this this side panel. Or no, I need it. Yeah, I need it. Okay, so this helps me to organize my own mind, and I'm hoping this helps you to use your vision to not get lost with the whole bunch of data or information that courses through any inner dance process, which could be energy, emotion, or information. This is the time for the information to come through. So the image really helps to map out the infinite in a way that's contained. That's what the image has done historically. So this one's particularly important. It's interesting. There's 4 brains. This is the 4-quadrant brain model by Ned Herman. And how we came up with this is based on the initial idea. I think it was Perry who suggested that there were 2 hemispheres of the brain. That theory is called the split brain theory. And then McLean came up with the triune brain that proposed that there's actually 3 brains: the thinking brain, the emotional brain, and the reptilian brain. So when you bring these 2 models together, that there are left and right hemispheres, and then there's the top and the bottom, what you come up with is the 4, where there's the left, the right, the higher, and the lower. Inner dance happens more in the red part. And what's interesting that is not always obvious or visible is the green part is also taking place. We ought to have a lot of conversations about how the body seems to be moving on its own. And one of the reasons why it's moving on its own is it's actually organizing. It's actually organizing energy, emotions, and information. So if in the lower right, that's where you start to create the movements, it's in the lower left, the emotional left brain, where you start to put things in the places they need to go to, however spontaneous and fluid. And a lot of that isn't always a conscious organizational event, but nonetheless, the body is actually organizing. In a way, the left brain is sequential. So from the right brain, which is non-sequential, simultaneous, everything all at once, the one at a time is still an intuition of the body. So that when you are moving, if some of you are moving in certain ways, even when you're not moving, the body knows how to reconstruct what is deconstructed in the red. There's the sequencing, the planning, the detailing, and the organizing happening in the orange. So not to worry if sometimes there's so much chaos and messiness and this going into the unknown. There is actually a lot of order coming out of that chaos. So I put in this one slide within the bottom part to speak or to look for a starting point before we go into complexity. And yesterday, I woke up early, like at 1 o'clock in the morning before the 2 a.m. call, and I had this flood of memories of how I was first conceptualizing the inner dance prior to any real rational explanation as to what this heightened state of awareness was. You know, I was out there, I was in the universe, I was energy, everything, everyone, every day was an energy. I was purely in this movement thing. But because I do not come from a spiritual framework, I don't have teachers, I am not initiated by anything, I don't belong to a lineage. Earth itself is my initiator. I am the initiate of Earth, and what I offer is an initiation from the Earth. There were no models, there were no words coming from India, from China, from Nepal, from Europe, from Africa. It was just this knowing that was coming from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. So I had no concepts, there was no anchoring. But Spirit would give me that eventually, right before I was to leave the island and rejoin the world. There was some synchronicity. There were a lot of synchronicities, not some. Everything was one big synchronization. The first one, and it was so interesting. It was almost impossible, you know. And when I think about it, I needed an anchor, and there had to be something in this that was happening inside me. I was getting these messages that this is going to help people. This is going to go global. This is going to spread. This is going to heal. This is going to bring healing to many. And yet I was alone. I could easily doubt that this is, you know, I'm just this weird person who went away and this thing happened. But this energy said this is going to be shared. So what was it, you know? So basically, like my sister had this book. It's in her library in Quezon City in Manila. I saw it right before I left society, right before I walked away to become a sannyasin, a pilgrim who walked for a year and did the thing with the island for 2 years. The book was called The Magical Passes, and it talked about this really ancient movement that was happening with the naguals, or the shamans of Mexico thousands of years ago, supposedly. The book was written by Carlos Castañeda. Don't know what your stand and his brand of anthropology. Yeah, when I read that, it seemed interesting, but it didn't really mean anything to me back then. My mind was quite busy with my dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening moments back then. But what was incredible was my mom actually had this book with her when she found out that there was a strange man in the island, and she looked for him, and she knew that that was going to be her son. So we had the meeting, and she said, your sister sends her love, and she also sends this book. And so I looked at this book, and my mind was really open back then, because I was totally freed up. You know, there was no tension in my body, and I was ready to see synchronicities everywhere. So I picked up this book and I started to read it, and it already, on the first pages, I was struck. Boom. It was speaking about this ancient spontaneous movement, this inner dance that would happen to the bodies of these people who would um, th- th- their bodies would make these crackling electrical sounds, which was happening in my own body. Number one, that was it. That already struck me, that there's like this electricity passing through. That was one of my questions, like what is that? Um, and then the second was about the movement, that the body starts to move on its own, and suddenly that heals. That brings healing. That brings about change. The name of the practice was Tensegrity. I loved this book. It was my stepping stone. I didn't need to to read the latter chapters. It didn't mean much to me. It was masculinized. It was about how the movement was learned and memorized, so there were then specific movements you had to do. I didn't resonate so much with that part where you had to memorize, like, this movement needs to be exactly that movement, and someone needs to train you. That part doesn't really belong to what I was going through. But the first parts were definitely like the first key to unlock this whole mapping. That gave me so much permission and allowance to leave the island, knowing that this is not mine. This is not just happening inside me. This is old. So when I began to touch people and they were beginning to experience these movements, there was context and there was ontology. There was an existentialism in that, what was happening inside me. Um, the book was really important beyond just the concept. The, the, the explanation of why it happens stayed with me for many years. The explanation this book had on why does the body move spontaneously like that it starts to bring healing without your mind like thinking, was simple, and it's in the image on screen. The book said that when the system of interpretation like drops, then something rises up, you know? So you might call a system of interpretation your belief structure, your mental framework, how you think, how you know, what you believe in, what you know. So supposedly when that goes down, something goes up. And when you do read enough of Carlos Castañeda, there are many conversations where the anthropologist would be asking the shaman, like, what is the way to the awakening? Sometimes the answer of Don Juan would be, you need to erase your personal history. You need to let go of your story, which probably many now call the death of the ego. So that seemed like simple. There was authority or connections to this story because of the fact that my awakening was initiated by that Mexican stranger in San Gabriel Mountains in California. There was a circularity in that. So that allowed me to walk the earth, to visit places, to touch people, and this energy kept spreading. I went then to a mountainous place where I was going through all of these different sensations in my body: heat, power, visions, but also like feeling sick, like fever, like getting weak and then getting super strong as I was learning to come back into the world. In that place, there was a woman who was going into a retreat process. This was a convent, and she had this book with her. And then she showed it to me, and the book was basically about this concept called the Kundalini, a word that I've not heard before. in my life. And that's where I found out about all these symptoms people go through, what it means, the word Shaktipat, these terminologies, the Kriya and Mudras and so on and so forth. So that really was something, because that gave another side to the story of the spontaneous movement. A lot more lineage, a lot more content, a lot more mass to what was taking place, as if there was a universality in this. So actually I did so much research, and I found a spontaneous awakening where the body moves on its own in Korea, in Indonesia, in different parts of Europe, in Africa, in Brazil, many places in South America with the Aborigines, the ancient Filipinos. So that it just seems like this is not something we're learning, this is something we're remembering. And somehow, for some reason, now is the time to activate what had been stored and what was part of our nature a long time ago. So we belong to this. So I stayed with that, or those two things, the Mexican rendition and the Sanskrit tradition, that this is something. Now, inner dance has a history. It has a spontaneous outburst of a history where it just went. I didn't do anything. It just did itself. Inner dance is something that is doing itself. The moment you try to do something, the inner dance is absent. It's the opposite of the trying and the doing. The doing is a manifestation of the being. And it guides you. It guided me. It guided a lot of people. It guides itself. It knows exactly what to do and where to go. So it's spoken a lot. There's a lot of notes in here and out there that we could interrelate, so that for those who are interested in coming into contact with the nature of this thing, there's actually a lot of information. For those who have already been doing this, there's always a chance to check notes with not what I have been through, but what has the planet in this energy transformation been through. So my tendency is to try to share as much as I can with the time, the space given. So in the last Zoom calls, we basically looked at the same thing. Something goes up, something goes down. If you want to simply do this in its basic form, that's what you do. That's all you have to do. That for something to go up, something needs to go down. That is your gift, your ability to allow for trust, for surrender, for the letting go, for the descent, the going down to happen. It's like, you know, just let it go. And then for you to have the ability not just to kill the ego, but to inspire, to bring hope, to see the highest. You can do this through language, just by seeing someone, you can name the fear, or at the same time, while you're naming the fear, you can also bring out the highest principle, the highest observation, that this is an amazing moment. It's a scary moment, but it's an amazing moment. And when you learn how to speak that could do it. You don't need the energy per se. There's already the directionalities within the words that does facilitate the energy very, very consciously. But because we're also interested in the nonverbal, the nonlinear, there's so much meanings bound up within energy itself. Not just meaning in a psychological, linguistic, intellectual way, but meaning from a primordial, um, proto would be the word, like that which is before the next dimensions, that which holds potentiality for all of the succeeding ones. You can learn how to hold that language as well, that which kills and that which births, that which descends and that which ascends. So you can discover that intuitively on your own. I don't believe that you entirely need a course to learn how to do that. That is entirely discoverable if you simply went out there and kept trying and kept observing and developed a way to contextualize a safe space where people would possibly go into that. What for me is more difficult and maybe less discoverable would be if you stayed with this process long enough. What would be the things that aren't easy to see because they're happening within, which you can't really see. You don't have X-rays. You don't have. You don't travel with fMRIs and EEGs, and a lot of people don't know how to read those anyway. What exactly is energy doing? You could build intuition around that, but intuition shifts moment per moment, place by place. That's what energy does. It deconstructs constructs where everything is one. If you're interested in that, then you can go into that. That would lead you to somewhere beautiful, for sure already. For those who are interested in effective practice and applied theory, which is actually practice itself, then the invisible aspects would be just as interesting, and in a way it would actually inform you even with how to practice this in basic ways. So you have to allow me to speak in a very straightforward way today, to look at the interesting things and some of the difficult things. There are opportunities and there are problem areas in the energy process, in any energy process. It's not easy to hold the up and down so simply. So we would want to look inside that simple figure, like how is that in complexity? We've looked at this before. It's blurry. You don't need to read it. There's so much information already on neural oscillations or brain waves. You don't need to make that an exact science. The point there is that they're slow and fast, and certain times of the day something goes up and something goes down. This is blurry, but what it shows you is the movements of dopamine and cortisol in the body as you shift from sleep to wake to sleep, passive to active, active to passive. The waves go up and down. In a way, this is one point of view of how organized spirit, mind, and body are. It knows when to go up and it knows when to go down. So this is what you're doing. We already talked about this a lot in the last Zoom. Don't need to go into it as much now. We would repeat certain concepts still to help you practice, to help your mind also structure around these, not just to learn, but to structure, to meta structure, the structure of many structures, so that you can apply this almost anywhere you look. You would see the same patterns, for sure. Like, it doesn't matter the skin color, doesn't matter the language group, doesn't matter the climate of the world. There are energetic commonalities in many places in the world, especially when you hold the energy. So this is really where I want to focus. This is simple enough to look at. The system of excitement or arousal and the system of inhibition or uh, relaxation, depressant energies that kind of lower what sometimes goes high. A lot of people come to these trainings interested in the high. How can I bring people up there? You need to understand the moment something is going up, something's already on its way down. And the moment you try to come up with a goal that I'm here to stay up, you have to be honest. That's not how a universe is designed. We actually are able to hold the high because of the presence of the low. And when you can be okay with that, the low actually is the high. We just need to understand how to perceive, which becomes the experience of the thing that we're looking at. So the arousal system is pretty much the rewards system, the activation system, the energetic system. Um, these chemicals are important because they rule you. You could try to cancel them out, that these are not important, but so much of what you think, so much of what you feel, what you say, are ruled by these signaling elements that inform your body when your heart should beat a certain way, when electricity needs to coordinate in particular pathways. And some, some really excite, such as the adrenal system. So when people do go into these elements, the tonic or the clonic phases of what a lot of you have experienced and are experiencing, there is a huge spike in catecholamines. Catecholamines would be adrenaline, which is epinephrine, and norepinephrine, and dopamine. Dopamine is what we will largely speak about today. You want to understand how are we exploding these neurotransmitters. What do? They can do this thing that happens in the awakening states of the body, but what does it do to your mind? What is the long-term effects of this? Is this okay? Because a lot of you are interested in giving this to others. How much can one person take? And it's that actually the point. We need to look at the notes very squarely at what this has been doing. And a lot of what I share actually comes from personal experience. One huge topic that comes up into the next century would be balance. It's only natural that as we experience so much imbalance, you'd be interested in the opposite. So, people who come to these immersions and trainings and intensives, they're attracted to not exactly the balance because the experience of energy is very imbalancing. Positive outlook for that is we are imbalancing the old so that we could find a new balance. So catecholamines are very good at shaking things up. They're good for many other things, but let's look at certain other elements. So when we think about dopamine, and dopamine is the primary system, the dopaminergic cycle is the primary system that is tapped within an inner dance process. When you find the body doing these strange things, that is because dopamine is being rerouted across sections of the brain that would activate sections of the entire body. So dopamine is one of the most influential forces in the world today. Like bringing this up, for example, um, like what do people spend time on right now? And we're looking at this, um, the like button, you know, the comment, the thumbs up. That's a dopamine hit. That's like a self validation loop. That like one of the founders of Facebook stated that, you know, that's how they designed it to give people the dopamine rush. They were actually, you know, mentioning these words. We understand dopamine, and this is what we're doing. We want to give them a rush. So whenever that is sent out, then people feel good. But the thing with dopamine is it's very hard to sustain. As soon as you get something, it's not long after you got it that you actually want to get it, and you get it. But the more you get it, the more you don't get it. You don't actually get it, because when you're in a place of wanting and needing energetically, you can't get it. You won't get it, because that's not what wanting or needing does. And dopamine is a wanting and needing chemical. A lot of people think dopamine is about happiness and contentment. You know, dopamine makes you feel good. Dopamine is, in fact, more of a drug of anticipation or expectation. So that, let's say, okay, I'm about to experience something good, I'm getting my dopamine hit. But actually, when you receive your dopamine hit, um, the good feelings that you experience would be more of the endorphins and the serotonin that is released because you're satiated. You ate the chocolate cake. You watched that movie. You were with that person you wanted to be with, physically or emotionally, or, you know. And then after that relaxation, something builds up again because of the anticipation for exactly like reward. So when you notice this, there are specific places in the body that dopamine comes into, and because it's blurry, I would probably have to shift the screen a little bit and maybe draw this out for you rather clumsily. Um, okay, so here's how it works. This is the ventral tegmental area. Don't run away from the term. Wait, let me make sure that we have enough space for this. This is the VTA, and this is the space that sends out that drug, the dopamine drug. So let's say that, let's branch this out into 4 places. This is how addiction works. When you're expecting something and dopamine is sent out, it first goes into attention span. Okay, I need to stay focused because that's what I want and I need to get there. And then you need to move your body. So this is the prefrontal cortex. That should be familiar enough, a word for most of you. The nucleus accumbens is the part of the body that also, it's another receptor for dopamine, and this is in charge of movement, which means, okay, I need to be strong and I need to move my body to get me to that place that I want to go, that will make me feel good. So speaking about feeling good, you need to send dopamine into the part of the body that that is emotional. Say, okay, I'm going to feel good. I want to experience that emotion, so I need to send dopamine there. And then the last would be a lot of addiction actually has to do with sending dopamine to what's called the hippocampus. And that is the part of the brain that is responsible for memory. Okay, so does that explain inner dance? No. That is the opposite of what inner dance does. To then ask these like questions like, why does inner dance happen? From a dopaminergic standpoint, inner dance actually happens because of the rerouting of dopamine from those addictive pathways. So to go back to that screen, let's see, yeah, that mysterious part is basically called the striatum, and that is kind of a part of the basal ganglia. It's somewhere in the middle of the brain. It's very deep. It's near the brain stem, and this leads to what we understand as a spiritual awakening. When the body starts to move and shake, release, purge, activate, awaken, it's actually because you're rerouting that message carrier to the part of this area that starts to open. It's like a gateway. Um, so then, why? Like how does that operate? And that has so much to do with the work. The only time dopamine really goes into that part of the brain, striatum, is through surprise. You need to break the pattern um, of anticipation and expectation, of wanting, of needing. So think about it then, okay? Laying down, closing the eyes, using music, using all of these practices and holding bodies in this way, almost shocking them, using mystery and mysticism. People are scared, they don't know what's going to happen, they're hearing all these terms and concepts. Heart is pumping, dopamine is about to be released, and as it's being released because of the anticipation, because no one tells you what to do, because you don't know what's going to happen, because there's so much spontaneity, space for synchronous accidents are in the space. Dopamine then goes there because of the shock value. It's because of the breaking of the patterns. So that's the first basic rule. For that reason, one law that is the most consistent in the inner dance process has to do with the law of contrast or the law of opposites. I need to describe this in a way that is not visceral but more like audible, because sound speaks that the most. So let me give you an example. Normally an inner dance process starts slow and quiet. It puts people to sleep or sleepiness, and then you raise up the vibration. Okay, that's too fast. Let's start there. Starting to build up, and you're sending out. Okay, as you send out, say, melatonin that gets people sleepy, and as people are sending out like acetylcholine that relaxes them, here you come with the upper, the stimulant, the thing that wakes them up even as they're going to sleep. So let's say, listen to this track alone. Okay, that does something. And then listen to this track alone. And then listen to them together. Energetically, they hold the two together. And if people's bodies are positioned in a certain way, if context has been held, that's bound to actually do something. So that's one wave of contrast, where from slow you go to fast. So let's jump to the middle. This song's always done stuff. So let me even do some interesting thing here where it's speeded up even more. Okay, let me take away the delta. And then here's one basic technique that has been ongoing in the inner dance process. From that, and then you drop it. You drop it. The interesting and funny and amazing thing is that when you drop from the high, that's actually sometimes when things happen. A lot of you can attest to this. When you drop something from really high up, it falls, it smashes, like boom. That shock, that breaking of the pattern from like a like this fast track song. I don't even know what genre this Indu Adham Shaikh track is. It's something. It does something. It's hyper. And then when you bring about something unlike it, something that is the opposite of it, from here to here, historically that did it for inner dance. Starting slow, building up slowly, and before we didn't have any of these DJ apps. We couldn't control this. We couldn't control this tempo, which in a way manages the heartbeat. That's entrainment. All we had back then was from this to this. And that resulted in all of these expressions of, wow, that changed my life. That's all we were doing. That changed my life completely. That transformed everything. That just blew me away. That was so much more than the thing that I did with plants in Brazil. That alone was doing it. And then from that there would be this other thing, this next. I'm just giving you like 4 examples here. So this here. I'm shortcutting. It doesn't sound like sophisticated, especially by people's standards today, but I am sharing the gist, the initial gist of what the inner dance used to do. I mean, does still, but used to do, and why things are happening the way they're happening. Okay, so we need to go historically into that for us to have a starting point. Sorry, no, we do need to go to the Prezi thing. So as you can see, inner dance does break addiction, but that was just the introduction. That was the start in the. It's not just amazing; it's a maze. That was just the starting point in the maze. We were using the same music as you might have shared, like in some of the Zoom calls prior to this, between the years 2009 to maybe 2017, 16, maybe 15. We started to shift. When you use the musical style that I shared, it could lead to the breaking down of the dopaminergic cycle. But when you keep using the same songs to arrive at the same effects, you can see where this could go. If inner dance is a way to break anticipation, when you then teach people to anticipate the breaking of anticipation, let me repeat that. I'm not even sure if I heard myself right. If inner dance is a methodology that allows us to break away from anticipation, which is AKA reward or addiction, if we're breaking apart addiction, ego, wanting, needing, when we then create anticipatory reflexes that teach people to anticipate the non-anticipation, what would that do? That's a statement of a problem that we need to look at. So people who are early in this work, this is an inconvenient factoid, because a lot of the interest is actually to bring about that like sledgehammer, that explosion, the fireworks, the nuclear bomb. But based on what I'm telling you, and this might then help you to understand why the playlists that have been shared online. What are we looking at? Like all these things, like the womb room, long time. Why does it seem different? And why do people say, it doesn't feel the same? There's something there. There are all these reasons why we are having to shift from a very dopaminergic or adrenaline. Right. I mean, thinking about just disposition, so many facilitators are so interested in going to that part of the body. Solar plexus, for example, is the yellow space, and if you understand the endocrine gland that is within the yellow space, it's the adrenaline gland. The adrenaline is super powerful, but at the same time, it's responsible for fighting and running away and freezing up. So when we're actually sending out so much epinephrine, so much norepinephrine, do we understand what that does in terms of homeostasis or balance? This is important. This is huge. So what would be the case here? So I'm actually repeating the content from yesterday, and I'm happy about that too. Uppers, downers. What is balance? The word we use is homeostasis. This is what the body does to make sure that you stay within safe range. So when you go up, when you experience the upper, and the stimulants that are responsible for that, as mentioned, would be dopamine, epinephrine, it could be cortisol, it could be norepinephrine, and so on and so forth. In order to make sure that you stay balanced, your body would release the opposing chemicals to protect you from, you wouldn't lift up high, you actually could get a heart attack. So that you can slow down even as your body's speeding up. What your body needs to do now is to send out the slowing reflex mechanisms. So that would be acetylcholine, which is the main chemical. The main chemical sent out by the parasympathetic nervous system. There would also be serotonin. Endorphins could also lead to relaxation, feelings of bliss, even oxytocin. You'd feel like love and happy and relaxed when you experience these. But in terms of when you're experiencing the super high, the body would send these out to make sure that you don't actually go too high. And the main issue that takes place, especially in drug use or addictions to like coffee, cigarettes, not just cocaine, not just meth, is that the body starts then to become very forgiving or tolerant to what used to be intense. If in the past, when you took that hit of a cigarette or drank your first cup of coffee, your heart would palpitate big until you get used to it, because you kept drinking more and more and more. The more you go into that habit, the more your body would protect it from going too high, so it would send out the opposite hormonal and neurotransmitter units that you need in order to stay balanced. So the reason why people actually have drug overdose is because the tolerance level got so high that people felt like, I need more to get that hit. And when the body isn't able to anticipate the moment that you're gonna go into that high, it actually becomes dangerous, because you didn't send out the corresponding safe chemicals to keep you, steady. Um, so that is the problem with certain energy processes that happen even within inner dance. I'm much responsible for many processes in the early years of this work where I was really interested in the most spectacular ways people can explode. I believe that the first times it's happening is genuine and authentic, but when it's boxed in, and then when that, like, directionality of going up all the time is held for too long, based on a lot of what I'm saying, you just actually start to build tolerance, and then people will want more. Why try to recreate something that's already happened? Like, in a way, it becomes more of the experience of it, not the actual what is underneath, what is the meaning of the experience. So that's the reason why we share what we share. Like, a lot of the reasons why the music sounds the way it does is in fact to counteract this. Um, like no, not that. Like, I think I hid it, like, in another slide. Um, there are two main problems that we need to be honest with when we look at the dopamine motivation. Like, if that's really just what we want to affect, to stimulate the dopaminergic action, what is the problem? Like, why not? Why would we just keep doing that? There are two reasons why that is not okay for you and for others. First one being this. This is the GABA glutamate relationality. This is to think about the glutamatergic cycle. This is blurry, so I'm just gonna zoom out. Glutamate and GABA are responsible basically for learning, for knowledge, for thought, for learning new concepts, for going to school, for accepting new information. And when dopamine is highly active, GABA glutamate is inhibited. Do you see the gist there? Just absorb that for a moment. When you're experiencing the addictive high, knowledge and learning actually shuts down. Exactly what was in the Mexican shamanic process. So if that's what you're interested in, and I don't want to ever learn anything, I don't want to think about anything, I'm okay with losing my mind. I'm okay with going into spiritual ego, into loops in my head. Let me just keep going into the dopaminergic, like, hit. Let me just keep getting the hit. So that's one problem spot. The other would be related to this. So the red would signify the dopamine cycle, and the blue, it's really blurry, I'm really sorry about that, is that's a serotonin cycle. Now, one main difference between the two is dopamine only has 5 receptors in the brain. I already explained that. And serotonin has 14 receptors. So it's a much larger field serotonin expresses itself upon. Now, here's the thing. Similarly, sorry, why am I doing that? That's really confusing. Let me just stay there. Similarly, when you overactivate dopamine, you inhibit serotonin. It's not easy to have both firing at the same time. And so here is the difference. Dopamine leads to addiction. It's short term. It inspires selfishness, consumption, competition by consequence, and it's felt more in the body. Serotonin is not addictive. It leads to joy, long-term happiness. It inspires generosity. And once you have it, you're okay. You don't want more. You're sufficient. You're full. And it's felt above the neck. Okay? So that's why we've been mixing it up. Wait, so um, what am I looking for? I think this is what I'm looking for. I put in this new slide here. So we didn't go into this yesterday, but this helps to formulate things. Why the playlist? Why were we conducting playlists in this way that you've been seeing more and more in the last weeks? Some of you we met in Europe. I don't know if you saw some of you in Turkey. We're mixing things up. From what we've learned, a lot of the spontaneous, like Kundalini type, explosive adrenaline rush processes, a lot of the reasons why that's happening is because the energy activation is happening on two parts of the brain. It's the frontal and the temporal lobe. So my small cursor can let you see where that's happening. It's happening here. This is responsible for language, for action, for control, for thinking, for planning. And then this part is responsible as well for motor function, movement still, and senses. The senses are there. And emotions. Actually, sensory integration is here, but sensory sending out is here. It, it it's very non-think. It's very no. It is thinking, but it's more of it's very controlling, like these two. A lot of the left functions, when we looked at the four brain quadrants, a lot of that is here. And yeah, so okay, your body moves, you're shaking, you're exploding, you're feeling the hit. Um, but the interesting thing is what would happen when the energy starts to spread. So sometimes when people say, okay, I fell asleep, that is actually a manifestation of the electricity coursing through you, spreading throughout your whole brain. When you think you fell asleep, that is in fact a manifestation of an entry into another dimensionality. So not only is electricity passing through the frontal and the um, temporal lobe, you're sending it out into the parietal lobe. The occipital lobe is responsible for vision, highest seeing, like the biggest picture possible, the meta cognition, you know. And then the insular cortex is somewhere inside. Um, so when you have more electricity spreading through the brain, that actually leads to a more complete, like, whole being. So what I'm insinuating here is there's an evolutionary process that could be discoverable for you, where you can enjoy the early forms of inner dance, um, which is still being practiced around the world today. It doesn't have to be called inner dance anymore, but what got addictive or what got interesting for a lot of people is actually what was interesting even for me for a long time, because I didn't see the patterns as much as I might have later when I started to really observe inside myself and in others. Um, you know, like there were always these pointers. It's like some people see things, some people feel things, some people's bodies move, some people they this and that. More and more we tested things out, and over the last 4 or 5 years, like a lot of the manifestations that I was worried about hasn't really been at work anymore. People go deep, but when they do go deep, it's a different kind of depth. It's like really deep, and I'm not gonna just claim that. I'm just gonna put that out there. It's for all of us. I'm not I'm not going to push this. I'm just going to put that out there. That's that's from my observation. That's from the observations of others. I'm going to humbly just put it out there. These are interesting. And I do believe that many people are just realizing these things as well. And it is discoverable. This is, so when we will go more into this brain mapping later to sense like, wow, is it actually possible to send out electricity almost voluntarily, not just using mystery that maybe I'll try the song, let's see what that does. Maybe that's gonna move her right leg, or let me try to put on that song. We're at this point where we're realizing that even as we let go of control, there's a level of control here, which is the energy and control. So you can influence the spread. You can influence the spread. So when Fanny talks about complexity here, it's really not just about these machines. A lot of the techniques are actually quite simple to use, and we will be going over a lot of a lot of those over the next months. There's a lot of safety in suddenly coming into knowing that, okay, like this isn't just mysterious. This isn't just making it up as you go along. There's a lot of parameters here for you to be creative. There's a huge possible containment in this process that allows you to explore the infinite possible ways you can activate and also inhibit to relax. So really, like balance is huge as a topic here. It's really what we're speaking to. So I guess here we come into music slowly, not to rush. We can access the heart beat and the breath and the brain waves through the tools. One basic tool will be rhythm. So, you can feel the pulse. What is the pulse? I was thinking of maybe demonstrating possibilities with you, but I don't know if I can. Yeah, I think maybe I can test this out. This interesting thing with the new, if you upgrade to the new version of the new operating system in Apple allows you to suddenly share share using your phone. So I don't know if I can do this now, but let me try. My phone is supposed to suddenly become yeah, so it's there, right? I can't see it. I see Fanny's face. So like, wait, let me share the screen first just to demonstrate what I'm doing the last days. I don't always have time, but I can send you the link. This is DJs for Climate Action. They're connected with WWF and Greenpeace, where there were these sound engineers and music producers and DJs who went around the world to record the sounds of nature, the sounds of Antarctica or the Amazon. And so when you press on this link, you can download the sample pack for free. So what I want to show you is that I downloaded the sample pack into this groove box. This is called a groove box. It's a circuit rhythm. It's basically a sampler. And so you literally can take this machine out to the river, and if you have a mic, you can literally just record the sound of the river, and you can make a playlist out of that. So I, I need to test it. Can you hear? Can you hear? Yeah. Okay. So that's a straightforward kick, but then that's a penguin, and then I don't even know what that is. Yeah, bird, insect. That's volcano, I think. Okay, so what I want to do is to find the pulse in these random sounds. So let me at least start out with a kick drum, and I'm gonna press the play. I need to make adjustments here so I can control the tempo. So you see, you probably see the movements there. So because I chose a sound, and we can always give tutorials on how this works, then you can make a pattern with that sound. So for example, this is like a heartbeat, but the thing with the heart is it's usually looking for rhythmicity. So let's look for some of those animal sounds. Let me just create like spontaneous patterns. Let's choose a third sound. That's the volcano, right? And then let's okay. Let's look for another sound. Everything from nature. This one is being controlled by this one, so I'm going to move the camera for the blue box. And then this one controls the heartbeat. This one's linked, so I actually have these two sets programmed. So what I'm putting in is two frequencies. One entirely made from sounds from nature, and then this one but just to get rid of that, this thing just happens, and there are these different ways you can shift a lot of those possibilities. Okay, soft. Yeah, Italy said no one could hear me. Okay, yeah. Well, anyway, that was maybe a set of possibilities. We could show you more, but no. Maybe why don't we try to do the phone, because then we could still be productive today and actually yes, share something you can start working with. New share, iPhone via cable, share sound, share. So you should be seeing my phone. Okay, so these are my tools, and these are quite interesting to feel into, to go into. So primarily, like, this is the most common we used to start out with in inner dance process over the years. Okay, sounds good? Fine. All right. So just to establish how much control you do have, this is really just the heartbeat with a soft synth in the background and some white noise. So when you press this button, this one, the BPM, when you go to tempo, this very simple notion that you can control the heartbeat. And because we're starting to understand brainwave entrainment, you can touch people's hearts, you know. So what I normally do is put on like really long playing tracks that I don't need to tend. So this Choir of Angels, I love it. It's this choir of angelic female voices in the background. So that more or less adds a layer, and at different times in the journey, you can either like slow things down or make things go faster. And when you have that happening already, then you can put certain interesting things in the background or in the foreground. So this is white noise. Give you links to these if you want to study them ahead. You see the button at the bottom, it says Multi. There's this extra app that I didn't need to put there, so I'm going to erase that for now. So I'm just going to carefully like scroll. That's not carefully, but I'm going to carefully scroll through these sets of possibilities. Start adding elements to raise the vibration, to raise the energy. What else would make sense? I particularly like louder? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, they told me to speak louder. Maybe I'll just lower the volume. Okay. No, it's still the same volume. It's better. Okay, so it becomes hard when my mic isn't. So it doesn't happen at the same time. Let me just do a demo then. Okay. This is like this static noise. And then maybe a build-up. Let's begin a build-up. So here you see, you don't need to just play songs. What you need these are noises. They're not even technically music. So let's say I'm going to build it up with these railroad sounds. You can already feel the effects or imagine them in the room. So like that. And then let me put something on to bring it all the way up. Stop button on that one. So this controls the heartbeat. Tempo controls the heartbeat. And training the heartbeat. Then if you wanted to change the vibration, you just swipe it. Or you wanted to change the vibration, you can press these one at a time. But to bring the layers back, just to demonstrate, Okay, so I'm just gonna stop that and oops, sorry. What I demonstrated can be seen basically here. Um, Going back to the brain, there's so many choices to either like affect the two parts that are dominant in that extreme heightened dopaminergic space, and I just felt that it might be key or necessary to um, to demonstrate and not just to talk about it, not just to conceptualize how how actually easy it is to bring people there. So we're getting these feedbacks, or I'm getting these feedbacks even in my private channel, where a lot of people who are experimenting with these in the past, they were trained to touch people and press people and poke people to so-called activate them, to release blockages and so on and so forth. And as they experiment with how the vibration itself could hold the space without their mediation or intervention, where they're not healing anyone, they're creating the conditions where healing can happen on its own. There are so many things that you can explore if you are setting the context right, that allows that depth, the deepness to come through. And just the fact that we're sharing some of the most interesting tools like on the planet. This is music we're talking about. This is, like DJing, the cosmos stuff. This should be worthwhile, even if it, for any reason whatsoever, for whatever motivation you have, coupled with some of the understanding that we are offering here. This deserves your attention and the time and some resources that you would put in to organize your space. So that was just one, set of possibilities. When you look at my, what do you call this Finder browser, I have this playlisting folder. So that, let's say, when I open up the digital audio workstation, which could be Ableton or Logic, could be GarageBand, Bitwig, Audacity, or Reaper. Basically, what I'm showing you is my mind, my vibrations in my mind, my brain's system of holding the waves. That's why it was important to look at the waves. I mean, again and again, we look at the waves. Because all of these waves hold a vibration, even like a historicity, a dimension. Every speed, every velocity holds a vibration. So one tip is each, like this one. Each beat, each measurement of BPM is a dimension. That's a dimension. That's a dimension. And each of those dimensions hold a whole environment, a whole ecosystem. They all hold not exactly a history, but a historicity. When you think of historicity, consciousness itself has a story, a history. Meaning, as a baby, there was an understanding of space within time. And for the cavemen, the animals, the early human beings, or even people, let's say 10,000 years ago, having described what they could have been like, that they were perpetually in inner dance, there was a dimensionality there. There was an understanding of time and space very different from today. Rhythm organizes time. So understanding the nature of the pulse, The pulse registers the intervals between the musical events. There's space between the points. When you start to organize the points, whether it be fast or slow, and then when you learn to combine those points, you will bring about an experience of the dimension held by that rhythmicity. Um, oh, my video. Oh, yeah, my video is off. Thank you. So on top of the rhythmicity, you would bring in. Oh, weird. Oh, video. Well, it's still in the phone camera. Um, yeah, this is made in Palawan. I love these flutes. You would know how the layers would fall on top of each other. Rhythm is the heart. Like the wind holds harmony, just as melody is about the rising and falling of the brain waves. So the body really is made of music, and if you know how to affect that music, you can affect awareness. And we're going into the nuts and bolts of awareness, down to to the base. You can't really just make things up on this regard. This is pragmatic. This is practical. This is not. Um, it's here. It's immediate. It's there. I mean, it is energy, but because we created a way to sustain the energy here, that it doesn't just float away or explode in a spontaneous combustion, it is holding information. And I do feel that you know book, if it's a book, it's literature, it's a story, that narrative wants to shift. It wants to be recognized and understood. So in a way, we could go beyond a lot of these initial difficult, gating mechanisms. They're gating because we are really wanting to make sure that you are entering into this work safely and sustainably. You want to keep doing this for a long time. You do want to get exposed to the the whole space, the whole thing. Um, so yeah, I think that's my sharing mostly. We could go into a dialogue. Ahilan and Fanny can help me to field questions, or we ourselves can look at this together. You can chime in with short bits of stuff. I'd be interested, or we would be interested, not just in questions, but also realizations and insights. We received quite a bunch of them yesterday, and in this group, heart. There's so much in the heart space in this group that's also holding like a wisdom space. Hmm? Yeah. Maybe we can do a break. It would help you to, yeah, create some space to feel into what does this mean to you, and you could also just go to the bathroom if you really need to right now, or have a drink of water. I think that's what I need to do. Let's give it maybe 2 minutes, starting now. Okay, so I guess yeah. I don't see everyone back yet. Let's wait. I'm not sure if it's 2 minutes. Yeah, I think most are back. Um, it would be nice for you guys to verbalize. We do see some questions coming up, um, but it would be nicer to hear them in sound. Um, so if you guys could use some of the space to share from your own insight, your own wonder, um, where a lot of this might be going for you. What are you interested in, and yeah, so on and so forth. And then, yeah, as I said, I invite some of the experienced co-facilitators here to help to look at some of these elements. So I'll press the mute button now, and just feel free to come in. Thank you. Daniela, we can see you raise your hand. Yes.
Yes. Hello. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing fine. I hope you're doing fine, Pai. I wanted to share about my experience with the womb playlist. I did before the womb playlists, all the playlists for the 7 seasons, I think. And they were really good experiences. I have already shared about some of them. And then when I went to womb, it was very intense. I got in really fast. I was laying in my bed and my little daughter was just beside me. And at some point, I felt that, well, I just went somewhere. And then when I came back, it was like an overwhelming feeling. So my left hand was kind of out of the bed. And when I came back, I just wanted like to stop the playlist for a moment and maybe make a recess or maybe started again the next day. But I couldn't because I felt something was grabbing my hand, like here, over here on the middle of my hand, like so strong. It was pushing it so strong. And at the beginning I felt a lot of fear. And then I started like just saying, trust the process, just realize what's happening and see what is it that it's holding your hand. And I was trying to move my hand because I said, okay, I want to stop this. And I couldn't move my hand because the pushing just got stronger. And when I was trying to understand what was happening, I just felt all the energy moving through my body. And I felt like if I were floating, but at the same time, something was grabbing my hand. And then just an image, a really clear image of two hands, really big hands, just doing this, like they were in my head, in my brain, and they just moved aside, and I just saw these hands going. So I want to know, I don't know if this can be answered, but what is this that I felt?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It it's a powerful question, and the timing is right. Um, the funny thing, the ironic thing is the womb room should maybe also be called the tomb room, because okay, when you look at the whole construct of this playlist, it doesn't help participants so much because there's not that much familiar elements to hold on to, which means in the right timing, it actually brings about not just a memory of what it was like to be in the mother's belly, but also what it means to die or to transition into what comes after this. Um, so the terror could be kind of real in that way, where we're actually having the sensation of moving. We're not going to die because of a playlist. But when you speak about like someone touching your hand, that is sometimes an experience in the near death, like in a way. So for me to describe this in, say, playlisting terms, because this is something you guys are going to be doing, experimenting with. So the playlist, we might have described it already. It's normally designed to look like this. This is inner dance as a musical form. I'm trying to make it, okay, maybe blue. Um, the, okay, this is the inner dance playlist, but this is actually what happens to our brains when we go to sleep. Okay, so this is called N1, N2, N3, and then this is REM. Oh, this is REM state, which is the dream state. So when you go to sleep, before you go deep, your energy has to spike up so that you can let go of a lot of the tension in your body that you were holding throughout the day, and then your energy goes down. So these are brain waves, delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. This has always been interesting for me, and this is something we input into the playlist normally when we design the music. Like you go up, and then you go up, and then after the build up, actually no, an inner dance playlist. Wait, let me choose another color. The inner dance playlist normally starts low, and then it goes high, and then it goes low. So you start with meditation, which is delta, and you build it up, and then you go low, and then you drop here. Okay. Now in N3, and there's a question there, like what happens in N3? Muscular paralysis happens in N3. So in many ways, you actually die. You go through the slowest possible brain state in N3. And a lot of people, when they... Wait, am I on shared screen? Can they see this? Okay. So when people wake up and they're in N3 stage sleep, what they experience is they can't move their body. It just feels so heavy. It's because you're paralyzed. You're not emanating the more active frequencies that allows for movement. So it's the closest we can come to death almost, and it's really really deep. Now, what is up with the womb room is actually what is down. The womb room doesn't hold that same wave. Um, this is what the womb room looks like. Okay, let's maybe just try it in. This is the womb room. It doesn't have the rising and falling, and it's just like down here as low as possible with tiny, very very tiny gamma frequencies, with maybe a little bit of here, a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's like a it 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 will hold you there. So that playlist broke all the patterns in the inner dance process in the year 2000 and I think 18. That just shook everyone's world. People went so deep, and some people just got scared or they resisted. But that shifted the whole thing outside or away from addiction, ego, wanting, needing, trying. So in that way, there is something to explore there, not just in terms of the playlist itself, but in large part in terms of how we can use more non-expected, non-anticipatory. There's nothing there to hold on to. Case in point, the body's always looking for that dimension. So as soon as I press that, I know that sounds terrible, but the body's looking for rhythm. If I placed like a beat there somewhere in the middle, something would like be fed. Something amazing might happen, but I would feed the human element that's craving for something it knows, and in the womb room it's merciless. It doesn't give you something that would allow you to remember that you're human, you're limited, you are your patterns, you are your problem solving, so it actually was brave to have come up with that and to send it out and to see what it would do. And all kinds of feedbacks have come in from Africa, from Australia, from Southeast Asia, from Europe. Around this, up until now, people are still looking at what this is. Some people get stuck with it and don't want to leave that playlist because I can't even go back to it. I don't remember what was happening when that was done. So I hope that maybe helps a little bit. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Since that day, I haven't gone again with the playlist. I haven't tried a playlist again because I've been feeling weird with myself. A lot of shadows are coming out. I don't know. I don't feel like quite well with me, maybe. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's coming through.
And then I want to share that yesterday when I went to bed, excited because today we had the call and everything. And I was just going to sleep, like getting asleep. And then I felt like all this energy when I am in a playlist, like when I am just letting go and I am feeling the energy moving within my body. And when I start like becoming all the space. And I started to breathe like so good. I don't know why. I felt like all the air entering into my nose, like so nice. It was weird because my husband was beside me in the bed. And I was just feeling like I was on a playlist and I was on a journey, and that it felt so nice. And I remember that during all night, a lot of people came into scene. I talked with a lot of people. I actually saw Ituli, and she was explaining me a lot of things. And I remember that during the night, I just woke up several times just saying, wow, I am getting this information. I can't believe it. And it was so cool. And in the morning, I was trying to remember everything, and I don't remember anything, like anything at all. But it was so nice because I was conscient. And I was saying like, oh my God, all of this information is giving to me like what is going on. And then I went again to the journey, but it was so weird because it was no music, it was anything. I just was trying to sleep. So I wanted to know when this can happen. Is it because I was like just having this sensation that today we were having the call, or I was already connecting with everything, or I don't know, because I didn't sleep well, maybe for 7 days or so after the womb playlist. And yesterday and the night before, I just slept like a baby. And yesterday I slept like a baby because I feel like I rest, but I had all this journey and all this information coming to me, and I don't know. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And a lot of you do know what happened to Italy 6 days ago. So to actually go into that
Yes.
space 7 days ago, and then to be talking about these themes, you know. So I don't perceive what you spoke as a question. I do feel that you this is an answer to the questions. It's just not always comfortable, but these themes speak huge. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I think Carla raised her hand next.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Yeah. So my question was really around, is there a difference between awakening the Kundalini, activating the Kundalini, and also can these deeper dimensions that we go into sort of be measured? I suppose, like, for me, when I think of Kundalini, it's all about this movement and this heat up the spine, and people have this great fear about waking up this Kundalini. Then a lot of my inner dance sessions that I've been doing, I've been in this deeper dimension that you speak of where there hasn't been any movement. So is that still the Kundalini, or this energy still at work, or is it that I'm in a different dream state?
I'm just gonna quickly say that Kundalini is not a word or a concept that I've been working with in the last 10 years. So I'm going to ask Fanny or Ahilan to see what they think about this. I could still chime in afterwards, but I'm interested in what they have to say. If any.
Yeah, it's very interesting for me. The word Kundalini came from my yoga studies, and it's a concept that has been revisited in inner dance because it's coming from outside. Like it's not something that we talk about in the community when we come from understanding inner dance. It's really coming from people sharing about their Kundalini experience. So what is interesting is when Pi shared the two arrows coming up and coming down, it's a lot about the system of interpretation. So we have words and meanings that represent things, and we associate a meaning and different concepts, and also perception, and also it goes into creating like stories about what is about something, whatever this thing is. So for me personally, I heard about Kundalini when I was starting to study everything. I was also starting to come into inner dance, but not as much. I was by my own studying the brain and studying the body and studying everything. And I did my yoga teacher training, and I was into everything that was for me trying to explain what was happening, because I went into a deep process of losing everything in my life. So I wanted to understand my depression. I wanted to understand where I was coming from. And then this word Kundalini came up through my Indian studies, and I didn't know what it was. And I was studying a lot with a friend about like ancient scriptures and the meaning of them, and also to understand how much a translation that has been done from mostly from the West, because the translation was not needed before. That when the Westerners came to India, this is when they brought back the book, and then this is where they started to actually translate without actually really having the knowledge or the lineage fully, and also understanding that India had a lot of crusade, and they lost a lot of books and a lot of the meaning also. So they've been trying to understand through Sanskrit and other kind of lost language, or very hard to understand or to relate to language, the meaning of Kundalini. And even today into yoga, the meaning of Kundalini is under or over interpreted. It's not the meaning that we feel. I think that there's a rush of energy that can appear, but for something to ascend, something needs to descend. Some people also explain the Kundalini every time you breathe. So at each breath, when you breathe in, something descend in you. When you breathe out, something ascend. And this is the life force. What happens when you are born is first breath, and what happens when you die, the last breath. So what is the meaning of Kundalini? Like this is something that a lot in the spiritual communities is a concept that people allow themselves to apply into a lot of different meanings, because it fits the definition they want to have into. So the question is, define it yourself. You can take it from the books, but what does it mean from your own experience? What do you actually feel inside of you? And if the Kundalini awakening happens and there's a rush of energy, and some people really have this, what is its purpose? Is it just to bring you up and that's it? What is actually the purpose to come into this awakening and to be brought up, and then what is it? Because also when we look into the Indian traditions, and also a lot into the spiritual communities and philosophies and theories that are there, a lot of the time they say, oh, you're low chakras, low vibration, and you need to actually be higher and go into the higher chakras, which is not actually a holistic view of bringing everything together. And if we are there, then we create actually more separation. And if we understand what it means to be all one, what it means to actually be consciousness, it's not to continue to actually separate and divide things more and more, and to create actually more polarities. So the meaning of the violet and the meaning of the red is actually to meet together, to have the left and the right brain coming together. It's to have all of these polarities coming together. So it's the Kundalini to rise up and to awaken or to activate whatever is the system of interpretation that you have related to this. But some things need to drop. Some things need to also be there. We can go to the cosmos, but we also need food from earth. We also need the roots to hold us. So a lot of people also go into the space, into their spiritual journeys, that, which is also for me a word that I have a hard time relating to, because it's been, to me personally, kind of overused, or I'm growing into making my own definition, or really going back to the real root of the word, and researching actually what is the meaning. So people go into the space, but also there's the earth element that is needed. And then this is where, when we look into inner dance and all the colors that we are using, I don't know if we've been presenting the mandala, but it's been seen, like when we go into the mandala, it's seen as the 6 colors are in a mandala, like it's been represented by a circle, and then you have violet in the middle. And so it's different from being seen as a vertical way, which is that one is needs to open and then the other can. And so it's more looking into the relationship between the correlation between polarities and things that can actually come together instead of continuing to create more separation. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, here's Achlan. I was born in Sri Lanka in a Hinduistic family, and I grew up also as a Hindu. And actually, this term Kundalini was never present in our environment, in our context. And it was also not present in that way how actually I have learned much, much later when I came to Germany and I went to some personal processes and experienced some of those spontaneous movements, not within me, but within experience with some other friends. But what happened in those spontaneous movement is actually based on the culture you live in, and the words you use are actually creating a paradigm of what you actually see when those spontaneous movement happening. At the same time, so like if it's happening the same thing in Sri Lanka or in India, the spontaneous movement, it is in a way differently looked at it. And it was, there is a system which is taken care of because it is known for very long that there's something speaking through a person. And I have met a few years ago a friend, someone here in Berlin, when I was already doing inner dance. And he was in his 40s, and when in the 20s, he experienced some spontaneous movement and kind of things, and he didn't know what it is. And he actually went to the clinic, and then he ended up in the psychiatry for 20 years, taking medicine to suppress it, depressant. So because it was not known. So in the same way also, when the Kundalini, and then when we had this talk, when we had some time to spend together, we could look at this from a different angle and different perception. So, and he was already feeling something inside him that he actually don't want to take this medication anymore. And he was stopping again, but he has to go back because he was living in the system. And after 2 talks we had, 1-2 talks, he actually had found even more trust to go through the process of not taking the medication. in the same or similar way, also when the word Kundalini traveled from the east to the west, it created a paradigm here where there's something is sleeping and can be awakened, and then there is something happening. While all those historicity on history is coming with the culture which is there in India or in Sri Lanka or in this environment, is not anymore there. So I think there is something to look into it, actually, how words are creating a paradigm, and those paradigms are actually defining our perceptions. And how can we actually go back and take the observing position and see what is actually happening, what is going up and what is going down, and where is this meeting point? Yeah.
Yeah,
I hope this helps.
it's really amazing what both of you shared. So I guess I do need to contribute to this because it's important that I verbalize a stand. If people are still asking these questions, it speaks to us and where some of you are coming from. Kundalini was a concept that was waiting to be held because it would ontologize or give permission for this thing that doesn't actually have a name to be allowed because it has been resisted. We do have to look at how the word or the concept has been put into a containment, that it could be practiced in the same way yoga is practiced. It could be sold as a product, a commodity. It becomes a commodity. It's open to the whole industrialization of things, which then makes Kundalini as a proof of concept not an energy into itself, but as an object. The way we verbalize it, the way we talk about it, it almost becomes like a thing. For me, my problem with Kundalini as an object or as a contained concept is that when we hold it as that continuously, it actually energetically, mentally, socially prevents us from going into the deeper structure that is at the heart of this energy. If I was to rename the thing that is at the heart of this energy, it would be consciousness. So just to align with all of you, all of us here, the reason why we are holding the inner intensive is because we are interested in consciousness. We are interested in who are we and what are we made of. Now, so Kundalini could be just a substitution of many placeholders. You can call it like energy, you can call it life force, you can call it chi, you can call it shakti, you can call it yin, you can call it prana. It doesn't actually matter, they're all place holding the same thing. What makes Kundalini so popular now is it describes the movement from one place to the next. But to actually oversimplify that and put that into a box isn't like intuitively matching with what we would find out if we went deeper into the nature of what we are. So there are nonetheless the waves, the stages of rising and falling. And when, let's say one of the reasons why there is that rising, that spontaneous movement that happens in the body, and this is what I've seen and what I do believe, there is a time in many people's lives when there is like a switch, when something goes down and something goes up. So this can either happen spontaneously, or this can happen because of a workshop, which is quite controlled. It's a controlled environment. Someone pays, they come, and it's more like a doing, which in a way is forced somehow. But we do want to believe that even a workshop can do something. It's just that based on how we've seen, like the West taking something like yoga, which is about, like purification, absolute purgation, and like deep practice, to then see the same thing happening to energy itself, how it's becoming studiofied. It needs to be looked at in that regard. For my story, where I, lived alone, eating coconuts and almost nothing, going through this whole process, Kundalini was not something that I did. If I was to use that concept, like I did not attend a Kundalini workshop. What happened was my body moved because I became one with the mother, which is the earth. I became one with nature. I went into a communion with Mother Earth. And then, so that was the cause. Going into raw food, going into live enzymes, going into simplicity, going into nature, going into purity. The movement of the body was an effect of being one with the earth. Now, a lot of people are doing the opposite. They're like, oh, if I move, if I experience that movement, so the movement becomes the cause, not the manifestation, then that, what does that do? Does that bring me closer to the earth? But based on observation of the consumptive ways Kundalini is being sold through many, many movements, it's been happening for many years already. What does that say? Like to be interested in inner dance, an energy that comes from becoming simple, living with the earth. Do you know I spent $20 in 2 years living on that island, having let go of everything. That's the root of finding true wealth from inside. And then I start hearing about like how much this is being charged, sold like across the world. It's just pure opposite of what it actually is. Then I just have to watch it. It's like, okay, what is the core? What is the essence of this thing? What comes first? The cause or the effect? So one of the things this gift bears is that you will become one with the earth. And right now we are not one with the earth, and something's coming that is a product of not being one with the earth. So the energy holds a lot of codes, a lot of information that brings instructions to what it means to become one with the earth. And when you become one with the earth, your body will manifest what it means to become one with the earth. There's no need to go into a workshop to listen to a playlist and this and that. The reason why we do listen to the playlist and we are going into these intensives is to look at the thing structurally that otherwise could be looked at as washing it all away, and then there's nothing there, and we're not gonna like see what's underneath or within or inside. So I think after you've had the experience, don't get attached to the concept. Don't feel like you need to put a word there, not even inner dance. Don't feel like you have to name it, because traditionally the process of naming itself in the whole history of the evolution of human language is to put something deep and big into a box, so that when you think you know something about the thing, and this is pure inner dance as a science, when you look at someone, and a lot of us are interested in judgment, for example. It's like, oh, they're looking at me and they think they know me, and then they're saying things about me. The more people think they know you is the moment they don't actually know you as a potentiality. That's what naming did. So that when you think you know what that word means, to make a definition is to make definite. And to make definite is to make finite, which means you make small out of something really big. The inner dance is actually an unnaming process. So it becomes really difficult when we start to name the energy. You know what I did? I think it was in 2018. I couldn't spell inner dance with capital letters. I had to, every time I would write inner dance, it would be with small letters, because even naming the energy in that way was really hard for me. It's easy to capitalize on the energy. It's actually easy because there's so much power in it. But because I was close to the source of this thing, I knew where it was coming from. And I knew what it was supposed to do. I knew what it was supposed to give. So Kundalini is the concept that will popularize a huge awakening. But it is still just one of the many starting points, just like yoga and breathwork and many other things in the past we're going to do. It was on its way. It was just waiting for someone or some people to take that concept and use it in a way that would put it into a box. I'm not naming names. I don't care really what. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and these are all sacred events that lead us into the highest possible. Everyone's trusting what they're doing, and we're all coming from a good space, but we can do better. We know too much right now in order to keep repeating what we've already tried over and over and over again in so many ways. So to bring this to the next level means to translate the energy in a way that the world can understand. And when I say that, I'm not talking about introducing this in yoga studios. I'm talking about introducing this in schools, in hospitals, in governments, to corporations, to non-government agencies. All of these we've done, and we continue to do that. But if I give them the term Kundalini, and if they type that in Google, and then they see what comes up, what chances would I have that I could structurally work with them in philosophical, theoretical, scientific terms that are required to help a society that's already structured to undergo a restructuring process? So to use some of these terms is a choice point. I think it's okay for you to work with any naming and conceptualization that seems proper to you. Definitely there are ways to do this that will make more money than not. In fact, what we are offering is not going to be the mass popular choice. To slow down and to look at this structurally within the naming itself demands that we place interest on What does the neurosciences have to say? What does psychology have to say about this? What does anthropology have to say about this? Um, Linguistics is particularly important because one of the main things that undergo transformations in this process, even to call it Kundalini, is language. Something happens to the language centers of the brain. So, what we are helping you guys to achieve is a critical thinking process. Where trust comes in, it's the opposite of criticism. It's also the appreciative feeling process to know that everything is known and we're being led to that. The critical thinking process helps you to ask important questions, because one of the dangers in spiritual industrialization is when we mystify things so that we don't need to know what it is. We just need to come up with a word that seems to explain everything. From like a religious standpoint, God is the big placeholder historically. You don't need to ask questions. There's this thing that created everything. Don't have critical thought. We went through thousands of years of going through that, even within superstition, and there's not that much autonomy coming from the individual space in that regard. So to mystify things in this way brings a lot of power and a lot of resources to the mystic. But what happens to those who are mystified? You know? So to use this energy in that way, to just keep systems of interpretation to collapse as the final point, as the be all end all, is not something I find interesting. I'm interested in stages of development that happens after people have achieved a childlike mind, because that is the design of this energy. When you experience something deep, you are actualizing the brain state of childhood. Um, this can be shown not just as a concept. You are going into the brain state of the toddler, which is similar to the brain state of REM state, or the dream. We're remembering what it means to dream again, and then we're also remembering what it means to be like a child, because the child's brain held many potentials. The brain of a baby has 100 billion neurons. The brain of an adult has 50 billion neurons. So to go back to your pure potential, you have to go back to what you used to be. And sometimes electricity is a way to undergo what's called a neurogenesis, to give birth once again to new cells, not just to undergo cell death, cellular death, synaptic death, but to actually make new connections that have been lost because we had to be here and life was hard and we had to take care of the kids and we had to go to work, we had to go to school. That burned so many of those connections. To go back into those connections means to become like a child again. And as you become that, you need to take a lot of care in becoming a grown-up once again. To have an awakening, most people go to the East, and that's part of the waking up process. But a lot of the structure is actually being held in the West. Now, I'm a sharp and deep believer in the awakening of the West. And according to many teachers, the West holds the growth process. The East holds the awakening. We go to the East to wake up, and then we go to the West to grow up. And I think we really need to mature right now. So energetically, the design for the work that you will conduct that we're interested in is hold both the awakening and the growing. Hold evolution, where people can actually like expand, and the real word for expand in this sense is structure. A a lot of the spiritual awakening is about deconstruction. It's about letting go, exploding, feeling. It's really amazing to get in touch with your feelings. But what does it mean to get in touch with your thoughts? Are you not interested as well in mapping out your insight and your vision based on who you actually are? The stage you come into after the experience is called metacognition. Consciousness or spirit itself is coming to know itself. So either you get to know yourself as, oh, I'm energy. But energy as a concept is a generalization. It's a word. Are you not, as God and Goddess, interested in your own structure? If you were the universe and you looked at the mirror, would you not ask, what am I? And what do I look like? So depending on how you hold the energy, depending on how you contextualize it to yourself and your beloveds, your audience, the people you hold, that will influence totally where they would go. The music that you use will be consequence of that. The words that you use will be consequence to that. And how you hold the energy will be where people go. So I want to clarify, Kundalini is not a term we use in inner dance as much as we, and right now it's been confusing because a lot of people have been going to inner intensive. Afterwards, they come up with these offerings, inner dance Kundalini, Kundalini inner dance activation, and it's becoming a really big concern actually I'm not asking people to make choices because I really don't care what you call the energy. That problem isn't the concern for me. My problem is when you do this, do you understand what you're doing? Do you understand what this is? Do you have explanatory powers that teachers, principals, parents can Google, can learn from? So structure is what we're offering, and there are certain important questions that can be asked that leads to structure. There are certain questions that could actually loop us back into the naming of this energy, which is a generalization. It's an oversimplification. It doesn't help us always move forward. Having said all that, I am not discrediting or canceling out the validity of this term. Kundalini was a concept that was going to wait as it would ontologize this possible release. And surrender means to just go back into yourself, where you would realize like what you are. And the truth of what you are is it's not you. It's a we. It's the collective consciousness. And that's really the meaning for what goes down. The ego goes down. Something needs to replace it. We can't just keep getting stuck with trauma, ego death, I'm dying. Something needs to give birth. And in the energy itself, it's the planet's consciousness that arises in you and me. So if you know how to language this well, it's like, like it's hard to put into words, isn't it? So yeah, I'm really gentle here. I'm really sensitive to this topic, but because it seems to be coming up, especially today, I think our stand from our community needs to be quite clear. We are holding this entire work to go deeper. And Kundalini is not a word we use in our processes. Yeah. Who's next?
Thank
Just
you so
unmute. Thank you. No need to raise, just unmute and see if you don't bump into someone on the way to expression.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Marta.
Hi. I don't have a specific question. I just want to share. Is that I've done 2 sessions and using inner dance playlist, and playing with my noise and some music together. And it's been an amazing experience, both for me and for the people that are, trusting the environment that's going on. And a lot of them has been like expressing so many beautiful stories to me, and are still sending me and telling me about it. And I'm not going to have it very long. And there's another very close to my heart. My son had a little bit of problem in school, like all those guys, 8 years old. So I decided to try, to help him. And what can I do? So, and I haven't painted any paintings for like 10, 15 years. So I took some paintings and I put it on the table, and both of us were listening to the playlist and painting for like 1.5 hours. And we did this like 3 times, three playlists in a couple of days. And he just, I saw this big difference on my boy, and of course myself, I know. So I just really wanted to bring comment and tell you.
Wow. This is so big, Marta. It's so huge. This is the next wave. There's this woman in Manila, in the Philippines right now, and she's working with these prisoners. And she actually convinced this is the biggest prison in the area, and she actually was able to convince the governors of this prison to do art with them weekly, even twice a week. And then even further, she was able to convince them to do inner dance with the prisoners at least once a week, which is like, whoa, right? So in the beginning, what she did was she put the womb broom in the background when they were painting. And the art that came out was just so mind-blowing. And then they did inner dance afterwards. So what I feel happens here is like inner dance awake has to do with inner dance art. Putting the vibrations there, I think, helps people to see beyond their limitations. And I think there's a highly conscious process that marries the super unconscious way inner dance brings us to the unknown. I think it's a gateway to the known. So my feeling is you might be able to take this further, not just with your boy. It could be with a school. The energy is quite big in Iceland in many ways. There are many people. It's a small country. It's a very advanced country. So I think maybe to take this into the next step, because I know that you did send me that voice note and I waited, but listening to you now, it feels maybe to bring these two parts of you together. I think maybe you're onto something there. So I think this is really big, actually. Thank you. Okay, who's next? Yeah, Daniel, could just unmute. Don't have that much time anymore, but you do have time. Is he speaking? I think you haven't unmuted, Daniel. We can't really hear you, so go ahead and unmute yourself. Still nothing yet. But wait, maybe we can. Well, he's unmuted.
Try now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
Give me a thumbs up, Pip Pie. Great. Hi guys, thank you. Because I can't hear the other side now. Coming from Gran Canaria, I was led into the course just this week, 1 week ago. Latecomer, sorry guys, I always come late. But really fascinated. My journey and experience of inner dance, I'll just share quickly, was around 2018 in Thailand. And obviously I see from what I experienced and from what it is now that huge things have happened. I've been out of that circuit. I've been on another circuit. And now it seems to be coming back to this circuit, which is great. I must say, Pi, I'm really, P, I used to call you because like a Greek word and I just enjoy Greek. So I'm always going on with P. Really, you sound like an echo chamber of what I've been trying to tell people, critical thinking. Don't blast the mind as the enemy of the world, and let's work and find some engagement between mind and emotion. And let's see how we can harmonize those two guys and get them to work together. Also from the architectural design point of view, the meta points of view, this is where my interest lies. Obviously going through the experience and putting into the practice makes all the world of sense, because if there is no practical applicability, then we might as well write a white paper about something and leave it in theory land. But this is really refreshing to see that while the synchronicity of synchronicities, there isn't a loner out there who thinks like we're missing something, we're missing a gap, we're missing a connection here. And it's all very based obviously on subjectivity. We all have our own perceptions, we all have our own realizations. I enjoy the fact that we can seek commonalities without creating a hard structured pattern around that commonality and saying, okay, well, this sound creates this movement, as if everybody's body and brain will interpret these sensations in exactly the same way. We can work within a range of commonalities and a range within the wave field of where the interceptions may or may not lie. And even then, when we go into significance and all the layers of language, beautifully said, the linguistics, the layers of cultural influence, societal influence, and where we stand right now with the world with the din and noise of it, which really does take away from the silence and the slowing down and listening to what I call the known, where we live in the unknown. Really, and so accessing the known, realizing it more and discovering it more, and that journey of discovery, whether or not it be changing, it has to be changing. By definition, it has to be transformative. There is no way around that concept. So the fact that we feel and notice change is just that level of perception that we can actually distinguish a change from the other. But what we cannot distinguish does not mean that it does not change. There is no static in universe, and this wouldn't be a static university if you were to create one. So just to say hi, really, thank you. I'm really enjoying reading the scientific data. I'm really enjoying the fact that mysticism, religion, and other dogmatic and ideologies may be present as useful references into how the ancients and how the wise within their scientific abilities were able to interpret through storytelling, because this is the way they rolled. They had to tell stories around the fire, and how that built up their knowledge base, but it is a really difficult task to go into interpretation, and it has been done for the last 6,000 years and not really cleanly done, as we know, through many institutions. And we can actually take a clean take on some pragmatic, practical, no nonsense science and psychology and sharing of information and looking at the data sets that we have and making our own connections from there. Yeah, really, like I say, I mean, I didn't write this text down. It's all just kind of echoing what you're saying, which makes me feel not a sense of belonging, but a sense of, wow, association. Well, you know, this is something I can associate with and discuss also openly with intelligent and authentic, real and connected, let's use these words, people. And well, just grateful, and see you guys soon, and happy to be here.
Big WOW to that. Um, what I'm hearing there is an eloquently um, put out there statement of the problem and statement of the solution. You bring those together, there's a it the difference dissolves. The problem doesn't go away. The solution doesn't really solve anything because it's really a matter of perspective. So listening to you, Daniel, for me, a paradigm doesn't bring solutions, according to the man who coined that term, Kuhn. Um, the paradigm at least brings us into a common system of referencing where from the east, the north, the west, and the south, we can speak to each other, thus arriving at a possible universality. So I do feel that spiritual awakening has its own gifts, science has its own gifts, and usually they are like kind of fighting. There is this debate ongoing where it's either one or the other, and it's so rare to actually find the middle space. I sometimes think that inner dance academizes the weird. It professionalizes the strange because not only is it super deep, it also acts as a very intelligent space. And when you reach that space, it can feel very exact, pointed, almost accurate when you get there. And a lot of you have been there. It's on point. So the word genius isn't spoken a lot in the spiritual awakening. Intelligence as well is you even canceled out in a way. But I think there are many things that we need now more than ever. So to take us there, like, are we interested in that? This super brain, this like, you know? But that requires steps. And not only is intelligence needed, it's multiple intelligence. So there are, it not just within the religious and the, you know, the mythical, but also within the domains of what is it in music that we might have missed out on? What is it in the theory of vibration and sound that's holding vocabularies, terms of references that we can hold on to? What about how language is evolving, technology, the brain is changing? I think what we need now in this real superhero or the saint is someone who can cross-conceptualize. Someone who can see the story of many stories. So in fact, one of the scholars who did study inner dance, and he is a writer of many books, and he's worked with some of the whole systems thinkers in the world, some of whom you might know. When he did come across inner dance, he was in tears, and later in the book that he did compose on the process, from critical and appreciative, you know, means is inner dance could be a theory of everything, a DOE, a possible DOE. It could possibly explain everything. Now, how it's known in the world right now is as a practice, it's a way to experience everything. So when we share, we do bear interest in both. Like, we should experience everything, because can you really know something you haven't experienced? So a lot of scientists are out there talking and thinking and structuring these things. Have they experienced it? And there are a lot of spiritual people, they may not understand the structures, but do they know it? Through experience, they do. And a lot of those experiences haven't been harvested as a structure, because sometimes structure means going into not just exactly what you're saying, Daniel, not just what I know, but what do we know as a species. So really the question is here, if you're going to access that much power, what are you going to do with it? You know, if and and if it really is like wisdom, I think just learning to prioritize. I think prioritization or an essentialization is really important now. Where do we start? How do we even learn to sequence this non-linear, all at once simultaneity that's ongoing? I think the difficulty there entering into this new dimensionality is we need new schooling or learning methods. If we're becoming babies again, we're actually learning how to approach multiple concepts at the same time. So if you were to go back to school, understanding right now we're interested in everything, what would be a lesson plan or a curriculum to manage that? I do believe there's something in the energy practice that can do that. There's something in the journey that can allow for the classroom to not always have to be the thing that's bound up in the walls. That, like, this is the school, this is the classroom, this is the teacher, this is the student, this is the lesson plan. We need to undergo certain projects. So for example, if we are experiencing this consciousness, it would require, dimensionality is also a medium. It is also a medium. So we need new mediums that would go beyond the limitations of the spoken word, even the internet and the written word, so that we could handle all of this. We're accumulating so much information. It's not just about that. In social media, we just keep throwing stuff in there, out there. The problem is, like, who's going to integrate that? Who's going to process that? It's not just going to be AI as artificial intelligence. It's going to be authentic intelligence. But to do that, we do need to reach a certain brain state. We do need to get to a certain interconnectivity, and that can't be thought about. That can't be conceptual. It needs not just epistemological ground, but like a pragmatism. It needs to be practical. It needs to function. It needs to work, which means there has to be steps laid out that would get us there. Now, from our part, we don't know everything. We simply know what we know because we allowed ourselves to go into almost crazy spaces. And where that brings hope is we didn't go crazy. We actually found out that your mind, your brain can retain information. I couldn't speak like this. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't hold memories. But after some years in this process, something was happening to this, where almost like this library, this librarification, this thing started to really function. And then, like, the energy knew, okay, no, look there, look there, look there, and nothing seems to get lost anymore. Which right now it's necessary to say it wasn't like that. In the first years, it was exactly the opposite of that, where there was a knowing that there is order in the chaos. And sometimes you do need to mess things up to find the patterns, to recognize the patterns from a much higher space. But there are these stages of growth. Being born as a universe, being born as something that understands cosmicality, you know, and just the strangeness of it, that I'm coming from the southeast, and this scholar once said, do you understand how rare it is to speak from this space and to be listened to from many, many sections that seems to hold that much together. So I am projecting this. I want to make this a project that especially in the places that might have not had the opportunities to access its own awareness, its own identity, the colonized, the displaced, the judged. One of the main tenets of this is sometimes the ones who seem to be the most messy might actually hold more. It just isn't always given support mechanisms, and those, some of those people might be in prisons or drug rehab centers, or sometimes emotions does hold like something very deep. So listening to you, Daniel, what I'm sensing is there's two of you. There's this really deep feeling inside you that's held on for a long time, and yet someone like you has had the discipline to go through a structuralism, not just through a deconstruction. So I'm really happy to hear from you today. It just helps me to settle. Thank you. I'm not sure if there were any more raised hands. Yeah, thank you, Melba. I'll download that. So I think it's time. We're past the 3 hours. We can keep the conversation going in the channel. We are always free to write me or us directly. I may not always have the right time. Now, you know, we are holding like a team process here, so we can receive questions and sharings and insights, but it is really relevant to share it in group space. We have a long way to go. There's a lot here that wishes to be conveyed. So constantly, and I just need to say it, constantly where we are at right now is we just want to get to work. We just really want to roll up our sleeves and get to work. And what that means is there's a lot of information coming. So you want, if you're receiving that, you want to be prepared for it. You will need the mental space, not just the energetic space. The playlists are really there just to pave the way for you to be able to receive and contain like a lot of this. We can't just keep emptying out and throwing stuff away. There's a lot that wishes to be shared. So that is what we would like to know. Are we ready to go to work? We would like to get to work. So thank you so much. For me, I feel challenged, provoked, excited, awake. All these feelings right now are going through a mixture. I'm sure some of these are going through you guys as well. So if you could just press your unmute button to help us to close today, tonight. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Mm.
Bye.